The most infamous philosopher of ancient Greek is probably that of Diogenes of Sinope. Considered to be the most illustrious Cynics, Diogenes was born in 404 B.C.E. in the city of Sinope. Although originally from the city of Sinope, he was either exiled or fled to Athens for committing the act of defacing currency. Sources for the exact reason for his relocation vary. Some sources say that it was his father who defaced the currency, and Diogenes just followed his father along the exile, while some sources stated it was he himself who defaced the currency. Similar to Socrates, Diogenes prefers verbal confrontation instead of written text. Hence, no personal writing of Diogenes exists today, if it even exists at all. Much of his life stories come from later philosophers who did not know him personally during his lifetime. But even with a few of the surviving texts on Diogenes, we are still able to piece his life story together. Of course, with a certain degree of skepticism, as the line between facts and fiction may be obscure at times. But one thing was for sure, he did live the life he preached, that of which of the cynicism. For as he lived like an animal in the street of Athens. And yet, he is considered to be one of the most influential philosophers of the classical period. Various video essays and works of literature have explored the various antics of Diogenes, such as barking and urinating at people who threw him bones to feast on. Or him telling Alexander the Great, one of the greatest conquerors of the ancient world, to get out of his sunlight, or replying to Alexander's remark of, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." To which he replied, "If I were not Diogenes, I would also wish to be Diogenes," or how Plato labelled Diogenes as Socrates gone mad. These absurd stories and antics have become more of a common knowledge, especially amongst those who are interested in philosophies and history. But this video is going to explore more of Diogenes' philosophy in a more in-depth manner. While of course, keeping the sense of humour and crazy antics, as it is what makes Diogenes' philosophy more intriguing. Before we explore the philosophy of Diogenes, let us explore how the term cynicism has changed over the course of history. In the modern day, cynicism is referred to individuals that are motivated by self-interest, or the distrust of people and their intentions. And as defined by Merriam-Webster, cynical is contemptuously distrustful of human nature and motives. That is to say, the term cynicism in today's terms carries a negative connotation that a person is morally corrupted and behaves in a way that maximizes their own interest while disregarding others. However, this wasn't always the case. The definition of cynicism didn't always carry a negative connotation, but instead, it was a philosophical concept that originated in ancient Greece, and the Cynics believe that the main goal of life is eudaimonia, or mental clarity, and living in accordance with nature. It was a movement founded by Antisthenes, a student of Socrates, and was popularized by Diogenes. According to cynicism, living with reason, self-sufficiency, and freedom is what constitutes a good life, while social convention hinders people from living the good life. Although the Cynics do not view social convention and norms as inherently evil, it suggests that the idea behind social conventions are absurd and meant to be ridiculed. It suggests that one should reject conventional dogma and live without constraint from such conventions, which usually hold people back from finding true wisdom. The Cynics also believe in the notion that one must actively practice, or ascesis, over theory as a means to living in accordance with nature and freeing oneself from social conventions. This method of ascesis allows the Cynics to live in poverty, embrace hardship and toil, and empowers the Cynics to freely express themselves in which they see fit, especially contrary to the contemporary way of life. This then leads us to Diogenes' philosophy. Diogenes believes that society is a human construct, an artificial contrivance that could not, in any way, make someone a decent human being. He stated that, due to the nature of society, everyone is trapped in this make-believe world that we collectively have agreed upon to be a reality, and are constrained by rules and social norms that were arbitrarily set, He was not the first philosopher to contrive such an idea. Other prominent philosophers such as Heraclitus, Xenophanes, and notably Socrates proclaimed the very notion that society is a human construct, and we all should wake up from this dream state and experience the real world. For instance, one of Socrates' most well-known works, The Allegory of the Cave, is dedicated to that very idea of human beings living in a world that is completely different from their interpretation of it. In the allegory, Socrates imagines a group of prisoners being chained together inside an underground cave. The prisoners are unable to see what is behind them, except the shadow cast in front of them by firelight, moving puppets, and real objects on a raised walkway with a low wall. In this allegory, there are two worlds. One world is the outside world, the real world where absolute truth lies, and another is the world inside the cave, where it was created through firelight and moving puppets, the manufactured world. Socrates then ponders the consequences of freeing some of the prisoners. Both Socrates and Glaucon agreed upon the conclusion that the freed prisoners, after experiencing the outside world, they would try to free the other prisoner. However, the prisoners inside would likely kill those who tries to free them. Socrates uses symbolic representation of how people prefer living in their make-believe world, as long as it provides them with a certain sense of security. In the allegory, although the freed prisoners were able to experience the outside world, their eyes were blinded by the sun, which causes the other prisoners within the cave to conclude that the outside world is dangerous. Hence, seeking the truth of the outside world is not an endeavor worth risking for, so they choose to remain ignorant in their make-believe world inside the cave. The truth is not always what is right in front of us. However, either due to ignorance or fear of the unknown, majority of us choose to accept the shadow as the absolute truth and not question what we are truly witnessing. As for those who have experienced the absolute truth, they may come to pity or even feel a sense of superior to those who choose to accept the false reality. This is the very social construct that Diogenes despised and believed that it is unnatural for human being, since it is against our virtue to be collectively clinging to the artificial dogma of society. This led to one of his infamous antics of carrying a lantern in the middle of the day to the face of the people of Athens and saying that he is looking for an honest man. This was his method of exposing the hypocrisy of society, where men put on a polite act as a social convention and social norms. Matters that could be conducted in private must also be able to be conducted in public, according to Diogenes. This has led to actions such as public urination and masturbation in broad daylight, believing that living with an arbitrary set of rules is not in accordance with human nature and is absurd, and one must act based on one's inclination. This is of no difference in the modern world. We choose to accept facts that we deem to be suited for us, and reject every notion that does not fit our narratives. We have collectively agreed upon a certain set of rules to play by, and those who do not follow such norms are outcasted and deemed to be unfit for society. Another one of Diogenes' philosophies is the notion that possessions are a trap. Whether that be material wealth or other forms of worldly possessions, Diogenes believes that those objects do not constitute one's happiness, but a mere illusion that society portrayed as a means to happiness, which is completely false according to the view of the Cynics. Hence, Diogenes dedicates much of his life to the practice of self-sufficiency or autarkia, and rejects all that is unnecessary for survival, such as personal possessions and social status. For instance, when he first came to Athens, he sent a friend a letter requesting assistance in searching for a shelter. But upon not receiving a reply, he found a wine cask and decided to live in it in the Agora, the marketplace of Athens, and survive mainly through the patronage of admirers, foraging and begging. In another instance, he even threw away one of his few possessions, a wooden bowl, when he witnessed a boy drinking water with his hand, and then stated that, "A child has beaten me in plainness of living." He realized that the sustainability of oneself does not even require a bowl, so now He lives off of only his cloak and a walking stick. Diogenes' ability to live a fulfilled and happy life, with little to no personal possession, made him consider himself a king amongst men. He sees personal possession as a trap that humans voluntarily put themselves in, and believes that to live in accordance with nature, one should opt for a life of simplicity and rid oneself of all things that are unnecessary for survival. To live in accordance with nature, one must be free from all things that may chain us down. All things that are unnecessary for our survival are nothing but vanity. The items that we own will become the very thing that will own us. Do not let society's false perception and narrative of what constitutes a happy life influence your view of the world. Diogenes was aware of such fallacy that he rejected all worldly possession in favour of a free living. To live off but a few possessions is nothing short of a sign of strong mental fortitude. In the death of winter, Diogenes had to put both his mind and body through rigorous training of simple living. He is known for hugging ice statues and walking barefoot in the snow, while in the summer he would roll in hot sands. One must not search for a happy life, but instead search for a good life. A good life, as defined by the Cynics, is a simple life that is self-sufficient, living with reason and freedom, that is not constrained by the norms and conventions that are the product of humans' creation. Diogenes' meaning of a simple life extends beyond just freedom of living and freedom from desire for personal possession, but also an intellectual one as well. Diogenes, contrary to contemporary philosophers, did not strive for intellectual truth but to live it. That mathematicians kept their eyes fixed on the sun and moon and overlooked what was under their feet, says Diogenes, proclaiming that these intellectuals are fixated on their quest for knowledge, while not truly living. Diogenes' way of simple living meant the rejection of social convention and arbitrary set rules for a more honest living that he deemed to be in line with true human nature. To serve human natural inclination, one must act as one sees fit. For example, it is against Athens' custom to eat in the marketplace, but he would reject such conventions and ate there regardless. The simple life that Diogenes lived does not necessarily translate to an easy life. The shunning of worldly possession and overcoming the body's natural craving for comfort requires mental and physical strength that is beyond what the average individual could tolerate. This is just a testament to Diogenes' willingness to live what he preached instead of theorizing and debating with others. When Diogenes was captured by pirates and was asked what he could do, he said, "Govern men." Thus, he was sold as a slave to Xeniades, but was placed in charge of tutoring Xeniades' young son. As time passes, Diogenes became part of the family and lived in Corinth with the Xeniades until the end of his life. The exact cause of his death is filled with mystery as well. Some say that he died of food poisoning, or perhaps rabies from a dog bite, or suicide by holding his breath. However, one thing was for sure. Diogenes was an influential philosopher that lived what he preaches. Until the present day, Diogenes is still known for his absurd antics and his way of living, and many Athenians at the time admired him for that. Although he left no written text behind, his story will continue to be told for many generations to come, and he will be forever remembered as one of the greatest philosophers of the classical era.